It's a story that feels like a modern-day fable, one that has appeared in different versions online because it speaks to a universal truth. It's a tale about what can happen when a small bit of power goes to someone's head. While the specific details are fictional, the lesson at its heart is very, very real. Imagine this: the sound slices through the low hum of a bank lobby, sharp and vicious. It's the sound of tearing paper. Mark, a bank teller, holds two ragged halves of a check, a sneer twisting his lips. He looks at the woman standing before him, her face a portrait of stunned disbelief. "Ma'am," he says, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "we don't accept fraudulent checks here." He drops the pieces onto the cold marble countertop. "People like you shouldn't even try something so brazen." He thinks he's a hero, a vigilant gatekeeper protecting his bank. He sees a plainly dressed woman and jumps to a conclusion, seeing a stereotype, not a person. He has no idea the check he just destroyed was a gift from the bank's own CEO. He has no idea the woman he's publicly shaming is the CEO's mother. And he has no idea that this single, arrogant act of prejudice is about to bring his entire world crashing down. Section 1, The Unfolding Injustice for Vanessa Johnson. The morning started with a profound sense of relief. For weeks, a blue tarp on her roof was a constant reminder of the storm that had torn through her neighborhood and the daunting cost of repairs. She was a retired schoolteacher, living on a modest pension. A quote for $9,800 might as well have been $1 million. Then, the envelope arrived. Inside was a check from her son, Anthony. His note was simple: "For the roof, Mom. Don't you worry about a thing. Love, Aunt." Vanessa's heart swelled with pride and love. Anthony was a good son. His success had never changed his heart, he always looked out for his mother. The check wasn't just paper and ink. It was security, it was comfort, it was her son's devotion made real. She dressed simply, comfortable slacks and a clean blouse. She was just going to the local branch of a large national bank, the same one where she and her late husband opened their first joint account over 30 years ago. It had changed names over the decades, but in her mind, it was still her neighborhood bank. The moment she stepped inside, however, things felt different. The line was long. When she finally reached the front, she found herself facing a teller she didn't recognize. His name tag read, Mark. He had a sour expression that suggested he'd been chewing on lemons all morning. He didn't make eye contact, just grunting, "Next." "Good morning," Vanessa said pleasantly. Mark's eyes flickered up, giving her a swift, dismissive once-over. His internal algorithm of prejudice, refined over countless encounters, whirred silently. He'd already put her in a box. "Help you?" he clipped. "I'd like to deposit this check, please," Vanessa said, sliding the check and her account card under the glass. Mark picked it up. He saw the amount, $9,800. His eyes narrowed. He held it to the light as if expecting to find a hidden watermark, pure theater designed to show his suspicion. $9,800, he said slowly. "Where did you get a check for this amount?" The question was abrupt and accusatory. "It's from my son," she answered calmly. "It's for some repairs on my house." "Your son," Mark repeated, his tone dripping with condescension. "And what does your son do to be writing checks like this?" The question was wildly inappropriate, but Vanessa kept her composure. "He's a businessman," she said simply, reaching into her purse. "I have my driver's license right here if you need it." Mark waved a dismissive hand, ignoring her ID. "I don't need your ID. I need to know where this check came from." He tapped the signature line. "Anthony Johnson. Very common name. We see scams like this all the time." His voice grew louder. People in line started to stir, their curiosity piqued. The private transaction was becoming a public spectacle. Humiliation began to creep in, hot and suffocating. "Sir, I can assure you, this is not a scam," Vanessa said, her voice firm but respectful. My name is Vanessa Johnson. The check is from my son, Anthony Johnson. He is also a customer of this bank. The check is perfectly legitimate. Her reasonable tone only seemed to inflame him. He saw her calmness not as dignity, but as the practiced cool of a con artist. He felt a surge of self-importance. In his mind, he was the thin line between order and chaos. "Oh, I'm sure you'd say that," he scoffed. He made his decision, one born not of procedure, but of a deep-seated bias. He saw a black woman with a large check that, in his narrow worldview, she had no business having. "I've seen this 1,000 times," he announced to the lobby. Someone comes in with a big, fake check, hoping for a new teller. "Well, I'm not new." He looked directly into Vanessa's eyes. "And I will not let this bank become a victim of your little scheme." And then, with a swift, dramatic rip, he tore the check in half. Vanessa gasped. He wasn't done. He tore it again, into quarters. He then contemptuously flicked the 4 shredded pieces onto the counter. "Now," he said, his voice hard as iron, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Before I call security and have you escorted out for attempting to pass a fraudulent document." Vanessa stood frozen. Disbelief warred with a profound sense of shame. She looked at the torn pieces of her son's love and care, destroyed. The money for her roof, gone. The casual cruelty of the act left her speechless. Around her, the other customers were a blur of averted eyes and judgmental stares. No one said a word. In that moment, Vanessa Johnson had never felt more alone. Section 2. The karmic unveiling. A smug smile played on Mark's lips. He felt the thrill of power. He'd done his duty. Next in line, he called out, already turning away from the woman he had just broken. For a long moment, Vanessa didn't move. With trembling hands, she reached out and gathered the 4 pieces of the check. She folded them carefully and placed them in her handbag. It was evidence. Without another word, she turned her back on him, her head held high, and began her walk toward the exit, feeling the burn of dozens of eyes on her back. It was then that the universe decided to intervene. A ripple of motion started near the bank's front windows. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, their faces tilted upward. The branch manager, a flustered man named Mr. Henderson, emerged from his office. "What's all this about?" he muttered. "Probably just some street performers," Mark grumbled. But it wasn't. Across the road, affixed to a massive billboard, a giant tarp was peeling away. The vinyl sheet fell, revealing a brand new advertisement. It was for the bank. The ad was stunning. In the foreground stood a man with a warm, genuine smile that radiated confidence. He was handsome, impeccably dressed, and he was a black man. Mark's gaze swept over the image. Below the man's portrait was the bank's logo and a bold tagline, "Investing in our community's future." And then, beneath that, was the man's name and title, "Meet our leader, Anthony Johnson, CEO." The name hit Mark like a physical blow. Anthony Johnson. The very common name he had just mocked. His mind stuttered. It has to be a coincidence. But the seed of dread had been planted. His eyes darted to his teller station. There, where he had pointedly ignored it, was Vanessa's driver's license. His hand, now slick with a cold sweat, reached for the small plastic card. He lifted it. The photo showed the woman who was now just feet from the exit. And the name, in stark, unforgiving capital letters, screamed up at him, Vanessa Johnson. The world tilted. He looked from the name on the ID to the billboard across the street. Anthony Johnson. Vanessa Johnson. The son's check. The mother's ID. The CEO on the billboard. No. It can't be. The smugness evaporated in a horrifying instant, replaced by a wave of icy panic. The puzzle pieces didn't just click into place, they slammed together with the force of a car crash. The woman he had accused of fraud, the woman he had belittled and humiliated, was the mother of the chief executive officer of the entire bank. He looked around the lobby. Mr. Henderson was staring at the billboard with his mouth hanging open. The other tellers were frozen, their eyes wide. The customers were no longer looking at Vanessa with judgment. They were looking at Mark with a mixture of shock and grim pity. Everyone was connecting the dots. The silence was suffocating, heavy with the weight of his colossal, career-ending blunder. Just as the full weight of his mistake settled on Mark, the bank doors swung open. It was him. The man from the billboard, Anthony Johnson, in the flesh. He held a large bouquet of roses, a warm smile on his face. He was coming to surprise his mother. His smile faltered instantly. He could feel the toxic atmosphere. Then he saw her. His mother, near the door, her posture unnaturally rigid. "Mom," he said, his voice laced with concern. Vanessa turned, and the mask of composure she had worn so bravely finally cracked. Her eyes welled with tears. Anthony was at her side in 3 long strides. "Mom, what's wrong?" He felt her trembling. Without a word, Vanessa opened her handbag, took out the 4 folded pieces of the check, and held them out. Anthony looked down at the shredded paper. He saw his own signature, bisected. A cold, dangerous calm descended upon him. His gaze swept across the lobby until it landed on the ashen-faced teller. Mark looked like he had seen a ghost. In a way, he had, the ghost of his career. Anthony gently took the pieces from his mother's hand and walked slowly toward Mark's station. He laid the 4 pieces on the counter. "Explain this," he said. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Mark opened his mouth, but only a croak came out. I, sir. Mr. Johnson, sir. I thought." The words tumbled out in a panicked rush. "The amount, it was large, our protocol, we have to be vigilant." He knew how pathetic he sounded. There was no protocol that called for destroying a customer's property or for public humiliation without evidence. Anthony let the excuses hang in the dead air. He turned his head slightly toward the quivering branch manager. "Henderson," Anthony said, his voice still low. "Is this your protocol? Is it our policy to accuse a client of decades of being a criminal? Is it our procedure to destroy a valid check without so much as glancing at a photo ID?" He paused. "Is it our mission to humiliate a woman based on, what, exactly?" Mr. Henderson turned a shade of pale green. "No, sir. Of course not. A terrible, terrible mistake." Anthony's eyes snapped back to Mark. "There are mistakes," he said, his voice ringing with clarity, "and then there are choices. You chose to see a criminal instead of a customer. You chose arrogance over service. You chose prejudice over procedure. Your employment is terminated. Effective immediately." It was a summary execution of a career, delivered in the same public forum where Mark had staged his own show of power. But Anthony wasn't finished. He turned to the silent lobby, no longer just a son, but a CEO. "May I have everyone's attention?" he began. "My name is Anthony Johnson. And this woman," he said, walking back to his mother and putting a protective arm around her, "is Vanessa Johnson. She is a retired educator who dedicated her life to teaching children in this community about respect and integrity." He gestured to the mission statement on the wall. Our signs all use those words. Community. Respect. Integrity. Today, those words were rendered meaningless. An employee decided his own biases were more important than our values. He looked at a black woman and decided she was unworthy of basic respect. He paused, letting his words sink in. This isn't a mistake. It's a symptom of a disease. It's the poison of the snap judgment. That disease will not be allowed to fester at this bank. Not on my watch. He looked from face to face. Starting tomorrow, I am personally spearheading a top-to-bottom review of our customer service training. We will do better. What happened to my mother today will never happen to anyone in this bank again. That is my promise. He had vindicated his mother in the very place she was shamed. He had turned her humiliation into a catalyst for change. He wrapped his arm more tightly around Vanessa, who was now crying softly, tears of relief and pride. "Let's go get that roof fixed, Mom," he said softly, for her ears only. CTA and conclusion. A few weeks later, a sturdy new roof sat atop Vanessa Johnson's house. She sat on her front porch, the trauma of that day faded, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of justice served. The bank launched a new, mandatory company-wide training program. It was a comprehensive course on unconscious bias and customer dignity. The internal memo named it the Vanessa Johnson Initiative. This story, in all its popular forms, reminds us of a simple truth: respect is a currency that should be offered to everyone, regardless of who you think they are. Because you never, ever know whose mother you're talking to. The world has a funny way of balancing the books, and sometimes, karma doesn't send a letter, it unveils a billboard. Never judge a book by its cover. If you believe that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, subscribe for more inspirational stories that prove kindness is always the right investment. And let us know in the comments if you've ever witnessed a moment where someone got exactly what they deserved.